So what is AutoCAD? AutoCAD was first developed by Autodesk back in 1982. AutoCAD, CAD stands for Computer Aided Design, and it's a globally used CAD software or 2D vector drawing software used by engineers, manufacturing, architects, drafters, the list goes on. It's probably the most comprehensively used 2D vector-based software in the world. Commands are typed in by the user, and these commands can be used to edit and change files without any limitation. There's an endless amount of precision that can be used with AutoCAD and is used, and that is why it is used still to this day for design-based and workflows, design-based workflows. As I mentioned, it's a vector-based product as well, so no matter how close you zoom into a line, it never pixelates. So before the invention of AutoCAD, designers, believe it or not, worked as you're seeing here on the left-hand side, which just in 2D with drawings and T-squares. This was, as you can imagine, incredibly time-consuming and resulted in a lot of costly errors. With the invention of AutoCAD, the process of modeling and designing was digitized and became a lot simpler. Being able to coordinate multiple disciplines simply by overlaying drawings was a game changer. So AutoCAD is the first of 4 softwares that you're going to be learning in this course, that being Adobe Photoshop, Rhino, and Autodesk Revit. So let's take a closer look at the AutoCAD interface to become a little bit familiar with the product that we're going to be going through over the next few weeks. So in front of us is a generic model screen as we will eventually set it up. To begin with, you have tabs, so tabs across the top left-hand side. The tabs are utilized in a number of CAD software, so it's not just AutoCAD. You'll hear me use this terminology again and again across the different softwares we're using. But in AutoCAD, tabs include Home, Insert, Annotate, Parametric, View, Manage, etc. And then underneath the tabs, you have the ribbon. Depending on which tab you click on, the ribbon changes to update. So in this case, the home ribbon underneath, or the Home tab, the ribbon depicts standard drawing tools such as line, circle, arc, etc. Plus command and editing tools such as move, rotate, fillet, mirror, copy, etc. As well as quick dimensions and text, and your layer properties system as well. Under the Annotate tab, as the name implies, you have more annotating tools such as text, dimensions, multi-leaders, tables and schedules, and revision clouding. The model space is easily identifiable because it's the dark modeling screen. It also says down the very bottom of the screen, almost in the center, you'll notice there's a little tab that says model there, denoting that you're in model space. You'll also note that the scale is 1:1, which is pretty typical for model space. You want to model to the real size of the geometry. And the properties window is essentially just a system that reports parameters based upon any object, entity, or element that you currently have selected. It will report general information such as the color of the layer that you're on, the type of line, the plot style, and then its coordinates as well, like where the object starts and where it ends, where it begins and where it ends. You have the layers property manager. I'm going to go through layers in a bit more detail shortly, so just keep that in mind. In the bottom right-hand corner, you have your different sheets. So at the moment, you can see we're in the model tab, so we're obviously in model space, but you can see the tabs there. This is where you create and can copy and edit sheets, which is where you place drawings for printing, which leads us to paper space. So you can see here, by clicking on one of those tabs, you go to paper space. And here we have an A3 page with an A3 title block and a number of drawings that we've plotted onto this sheet. From here, we can then go and print them out or PDF them. And then finally, you have your snaps and controls in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. I'll go through these in greater detail when we first open up AutoCAD. So some key concepts to get your head around with AutoCAD. The first is line weights. So line weights is a property that's assigned to a graphical object or hatch or leader or dimension that results in thinner or thicker lines or darker lines. Line weights will improve a drawing's legibility as you can see on the drawing on the left-hand side there. The studs, which are the rectangles with the crosses, those rectangles are cut at are actual cut elements, so they're expressed with a thicker line, and that enables the drawing to sort of pop, which means that not all drawings will read evenly. It gives some depth of feel to your construction drawings. AutoCAD offers 3 basic ways to control line weights. The first is by color. So the color of your layer will determine what line weight you're going to be using, whether it's a thin or a thick line. The second is by layer or by object using a name plot style. And the third is by layer, which is in the settings of the line weight column within the layer properties manager. And that's the method that we use in this course. There's no right or wrong answer. Every business, or every country has their own drafting styles and drafting standards. And even within Australia, almost every firm might have a slight variation on the way that they like to use AutoCAD. The difference is negligible. The setup doesn't really make that much of a difference. Once you're using AutoCAD, if you're drafting, the process is essentially the same. So layers. So what you're seeing here is a layer screen or a layers property manager. So layers is the primary method for organizing and controlling objects in the drawing by function or on purpose. Layers can reduce the complexity of a drawing and improve the display performance by hiding information that you don't need to see at that moment in time. Good example would be a layer that controls all your furniture, so chairs, tables, etc., all on a furniture layer. And that might be useful while showing a client a layout of a design, but is not needed in the construction drawing, so you can easily just turn off that layer and all those elements disappear. Before you start drawing, you should create a set of layers that are useful to your work. In a house plan, you would create layers for foundations, floor plans, doors, fixtures, electrical, and so on. And we'll go through that during this assignment. The layer property manager is your means of managing your layers, and that includes creating new layers or deleting layers. And you can see here, if we look at this this example here, going down through the columns, we've got the name of the layer, which you can see is prefixed with an A. In this case, the A means architecture, dash, and then the function, and then dash the line weight. So as an example, we have A-door 18. So it would be architectural door with a pen weight of 0.18. The layers you're seeing there with a pen, they're a generic layer. So pens essentially can be used for anything. You might use pen 13 for some furniture, or you might use it for a couple of arbitrary lines. It's really up to your discretion. You have blocks. So in AutoCAD, you have this concept called blocks. And blocks are basically, they're a name given to a group of objects that act as 2D or 3D grouped objects or grouped elements. So you can use them to create repeated content, such as drawing symbols, common components, or standard details. And they help you save time by maintaining consistency and reducing your file size, since you can reuse them and share the content. You can create your own CAD blocks, or you can choose them from pre-made, both which are within CAD. And actually, just before I go on to there, blocks also have the unique capability where, unlike a group object, so you've got the option to group elements. But the thing is, if we have, let's say we have two windows, and we want to ensure we got two windows are the same, and we want to copy them across, and we use the group command. If we copy them and use the group command, and we change one of those windows, it's only going to change that group. It's not going to update the other group, the other window set. If we use blocks, essentially you change one of the windows, it changes all of them. So in that way, if we have that window copied around 50 times on a project, we only have to change that block once and it updates all other 49 instances of that block, which is a massive time saver for drafting purposes. Also have the commands as well. So commands are simply typed into the keyboard in AutoCAD. AutoCAD will guess what command you want by using an auto finish system, sort of like the Google search engine. And the command bar at the bottom of your model screen gives you instructions and options on the next command. As you can see here, the blue screen, the little blue snip that I've got there, you've got an example here where I've selected, and you can see it has the history. So starting from the top, it says select object, one object was found. And then it's asking me to select the base point of that object. So imagine this is a line, and I select one end of the line. And then it's saying here, rotate or specify the rotation angle. In that case, I've typed in 90 degrees. This will become clearer once we start getting into the software and playing around. Okay, so let's get to know AutoCAD a little bit further. So I've simply opened up the software, clicked on the AutoCAD icon, and I'm going to open up the template file that was provided to you on Student Web. So I'm just going to go through my files, and I'm just going to go to my downloads, and let's find where that template file is. There it is there, AT1-template-001. I'll click open, and we now have that AutoCAD file open. Now, your AutoCAD file should look something similar to mine in that it's completely, basically out of the box. I haven't touched anything, I haven't customized anything or set anything up. Let's go through just some of the basic commands that I touched on in the presentation. So, first things first, navigation. To zoom in and out, we're currently in paper space, but to zoom in and out, I'm just using my scroll wheel. Just rotating my scroll wheel, moving my scroll wheel up and down. Next is panning. So I'm going to hold down my middle mouse button or hold down the scroll wheel and move my hand around. That enables me to pan. So let's go to our model space to begin with. So we're currently in paper space, and in the bottom right hand corner, I'm going to click on where it says model here, and you'll see the screen will turn to black or dark blue, depending on what settings you've got applied. What I'm going to do as well is I'm just going to set up my view so it looks a little bit more conducive to what I need to do. So I'm going to click on this button here that says properties, layer properties. And that's going to bring up this little box here. Now I can click on where it says layer properties manager, and I can drag this around. I'm just going to leave this here for a second. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a shortcut, and I'm going to go Control-1 on my keyboard. So Control-1. And that's going to bring up my properties. Again, where the name properties is spelled out just here in the bottom right hand corner of that window, I can click and drag that around. Now, what I can do is I can snap this and dock this wherever I like within AutoCAD. So some people like to dock something on one side and something on the other. So I might dock my properties on the right hand side of my screen, and then I can dock my layer properties on the left side. Or I could dock them above each other, below each other. Really, the options are yours to choose. In the example on the tutorial or the PowerPoint that I showed, those screenshots had the properties window sitting to the right-hand side of the layers. Or you can see here, I can even stack them above each other. I'm going to keep them as they were. I'm going to have my properties on the right-hand side. And you can see as I move closer to the edge of the screen, you sort of get this white box that shows you an example of where that's going to be docked. So I've got something that looks like this now. The other thing I can do is I can temporarily hide a window away. So with the properties manager, I'm just going to hover my mouse over the properties manager, and you'll see on the right hand side I've got a little X that will delete the box, or I have this little arrow with a line, and that hides the box. Okay, so what happens now is the only way I can bring that up is I hover my mouse over the name layer properties manager, and then that window appears. That helps too because it means that it's not taking up real estate on my screen. Now, the recording here is just on a normal, like a normal HD screen, 16:8 or whatever it is. I'm not sure what the ratio is, but you can use dual monitors. Is very helpful for CAD software, so you can put all these windows on another screen. Or in my situation, when I'm in the office or I'm at home, I've got one of those ultra wide screens, and then I can dock it. There's more enough space to sort of model everything. As you can see here, this square window is not really enough space, but as soon as that layer properties manager goes, we're left with a lot more space. All right, so let's just do a couple of really standard, bog standard tools and commands. Let's just start with a line. So I'm going to type in the command li for line, and you'll see that actually let's go before that. Let's just say L. You can see when I type in L, AutoCAD's giving me a list of possible commands that I could be choosing from. And you can see just the letter L, AutoCAD assumes that that's a line because most of the time it is. But you have a whole bunch of other commands underneath. You can type in the whole command if you want, in this case line. It doesn't really make much difference. To activate the command, if I'm happy with that choice of command, I can either hit enter on my keyboard or I can hit spacebar. And this is the same throughout AutoCAD. To execute a command is either enter or spacebar. Preferably, my preference is to use spacebar. It's just closer to my thumb on the keyboard, but you can use enter as well. So I'm going to hit spacebar, and you can see now AutoCAD is giving me instructions on what to do next. So you can see next to my cursor, which is that crosshair, it's saying specify the first point. Now, it's got this weird massive number there, like 50,327, but I can essentially click wherever, and you can see as I'm moving around the screen, that number is changing. That number is not the length of a line, it's actually the starting coordinate of that line. So I'm not going to confuse you, I'm just going to press anywhere on the screen. So I'm just going to click once, and you can see now, as I've moved my hand around the screen, I'm getting a few things that's occurring. I'm getting this blue box, or this white box with a blue highlighted number. I'm getting an instruction next to my cursor saying specify the next point, and I'm getting this grade box that's giving me an angle as well. And there's a few things to consider here, and that is because I have some snaps and some guides that are turned on. But to make it real easy, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw to the right, and I'm going to type in, say, 5,000, 5000, and then enter or spacebar. Okay, so that's completed that line. That line now exists in the real world, and it's 5 meters long. Remember, of course, that AutoCAD can be drawn in any type of scale, but we use millimeters for architectural design. If you're in civil infrastructure or if you're in surveying, they tend to use meters. Okay, so I'm going to hit escape, and escape ends the command. So now that I've done that, that command is now ended. So in order to select this line, there's a few things I can do. I can just click on the line, and when I click on the line, you can see it highlights blue, and I'm getting the start, middle, and end point of that line. I'll hit escape again. The other way I can select it is by using a selection box. And to be honest, this selection box is probably the much easier way to select, especially once we have a whole lot of objects in our model space. So the way to do that is I click once on my mouse, and I'm just going to click out in space, and I'm going to move my mouse to the left. When I move my mouse to the left, you can see I'm getting this green box. And this is one way of doing a selection box. And it's important to distinguish between the two, because when I move from right to left, I get this green box. And essentially this green box means anything that even touches this box is going to be selected, as you can see there. If I go escape and I go the other way, and I go from left to right, notice that the box is now blue. Notice also that if I'm over half of the line and click again, the line does not actually highlight and select. Moving from left to right means that everything within that blue box is going to be selected. Okay, so the line has to be wholly within that blue box to be selected. If I just have it partially overlapping, it doesn't select. Whether from right to left, using the green highlighter box, notice that as soon as I touch that line, or it enters that green space, the line highlights. So those are two methods of selection boxes. Or, like I said, you can just simply click on the element. Now, as I mentioned before, to exit the command, I hit escape. And let's continue on here. So let's use another tool. And let's use that line again. So I'm going to type in L, and then spacebar or enter. And let's just draw a box. So I'm going to draw a box. I'm going to say it's say 5 meters, so 5,000. I'm going to move my hand down the screen. I'm going to type in 5,000 again. I'm going to go across my screen, type in 5,000, and then back up to the start. And then I'm going to hit escape. Okay, so with that box selected, notice that each of these lines are individual. So if I click on one of these lines, I am highlighting only that line, not the entire box. That's because these are individual lines, even though the command allowed me to draw line after line after line. AutoCAD doesn't know those lines are actually joined. In order to do that, there are two ways that we can do that. We can either select all of them together and join them, or we can use a tool called polyline. So I'm going to hit escape, and I'm going to type in the command PL, and you see polyline or P-line is the first command that AutoCAD thinks of. So I'm going to hit enter, and let's try that again. Now, notice that AutoCAD, when I highlight and click on one of those lines of the box, it highlights the whole box because AutoCAD sees that as an entire object, which makes it much easier to model, especially when we go for actually some sort of commands and some editing tools over the top of those lines. The next thing I'm going to do is let's play with a couple of other items here. So what we did there is we did line and polyline. Let's try a circle. This time I'm just going to click on the circle tool, and you'll notice that if I click on this drop down box under the circle in the ribbon, there's a multitude of different ways that we can draw a circle. To be honest, most of the time it's either center radius or center diameter is the easiest way to do it. Let's go center radius. I'm just going to click once, move my hand out, and we'll type in, say, 2,500, and then enter. So we now have we now have a circle that is 5 meters in diameter. Next up, we can play around with arcs. Again, with the drop-down button, there's a whole lot of different ways to do arcs. Most of the time it's 3-pointed arcs, but you can play around with each of these. So as the 3-point arc goes, 1, 2, and 3, gives us our arc. The other cool tool within CAD, and this is within all Autodesk software, is if I click on this arc here and just hover my mouse over, let's go, let's say start in radius. If I hover my mouse over that, you'll see that there's like a little instruction description there. So it tells you about what the command is and then also how to use it. You'll see like the numbers there in green, 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes there'll actually be a small video that plays as well. So the tutorial to actually find how to use a certain command, almost all commands in AutoCAD and in Autodesk products have these little videos and little tutorials simply by just hovering your mouse over that command for long enough, which is a really handy tool. Okay, so let's take a look and let's do some editing of these elements now. Okay, so we've drawn a couple of boxes, a circle, and an arc. Let's play around with some of the editing tools. So firstly, let's use the move tool. So I'm going to select this box and I'm going to use the move command. So you can use simply just by clicking on these buttons here, you can activate the same commands, but I tend to find it's easier to type them in. In fact, most of the commands I know in AutoCAD are not by where they are in the ribbon, but simply by typing in the command in the keyboard. So I'm going to type in just M for move, and you can see the first command that comes up is move. I'm going to hit spacebar, and let's take a look at the let's not take a look next to the cursor, but let's take a look at the command bar underneath. You can see here the command was M, and so it says move for found, and that's because I highlighted these lines first. And now AutoCAD is saying move, specify the base point or displacement. Forget what displacement means. Let's just go the move point. So let's just go down to one of these corners. So I'm going to click the base point. And you can see here in the command bar, it says specify second point or use first point as displacement. So what I can do is I can either move my cursor around. So I'm going to zoom out, hold down the middle mouse button to pan, and I just might move it over there. The other way we can move objects is to be a little bit more controlled about it. So I can let's click on this circle. Let's go again, move. And I'm going to go, say, the center point of this circle. And the center point was highlighted just by sort of hovering over the circle. And then the center point comes up as a little green circle. I'm going to click on that as the base point. But this time I'm going to move it up, move my mouse up. And I'm going to type in, say, 7,500. And then hit enter. So that means from that center point, that circle is now moved in the up direction 7.5 meters. So you can become a lot more particular about the exact dimensions and the exact distances that you're editing objects. The next one to look at is, let's take a look at the copy tool. Let's copy. So pretty simply, let's take this box again. Let's take just like one of these lines. To copy, you can either go Control C and Control V, and you can see that my mouse has now got that that cursor has got that line there, and I can just click it once, and you can see there's that line. I'm going to delete that line, which takes me to my next command, which is delete. So I can either click on the line, I can partially highlight it, or I can wholly select it. Either way, and you can either hit delete on your keyboard to bring it back. You go Control Z. Or, and it's just the way that I work, E for erase and spacebar. Same thing. Okay, let's do the copy again. But this time I'm going to select all of the objects within this box, or all those lines within the box. And I'm going to go CO for copy. Same thing again. I can click on the base point, much the same as move, click on the base point, and I can decide where I want to copy it to. I might copy it, say, 10 meters away. So 10,000, enter. And that means from this point here to this point here is 10 meters away. You'll notice as well that it only copied once. If we wanted to copy multiple times, I can go CO and enter. And you'll see, where is it? I can go down here where it says mode. So in the command bar, I'm going to click on mode. And instead of saying copying single amount of times, I'm just going to say multiple. Okay. So what happens now is I click once and I go click again. Can you see my cursor is still got more instances of that square? I can just continue copying them to my heart's content. So it's not just once. When I'm done with the command, hit escape. And there's all those objects. I'm going to erase them. Okay. Okay. So let's play with the trim command. Actually, the fillet command might be a bit better. So I'm going to go back over to one of my squares, and I'm going to type in the command fillet. FIL is suffice, and then hit enter. So there's two things I can do here. Firstly, I can just start clicking two lines, and it's going to create a fillet between where two lines intersect, like a rounding off of a corner. But I want to be able to specify the radius of that fillet because you want to have that sort of control. So I'm going to type in R in my keyboard and then hit enter. And you can see here it's asking me for the fillet radius. Now, these lines are 5 meters each, so a radius of 50 mil is not really going to show much. So let's do like a radius of, say, 300 and hit enter. Now it's prompting me to ask for the first line. So I'll ask for this line and then the second line. So I'll click on this line here. And you can see that it has now created an arc, which is 300 millimeter in radius between this line and that line. Now I've used the square that is a polyline, but this works the same for these boxes, which are individual lines. If I do the same thing again, fillet, and I don't have to do a radius of 300. I don't have to type that in because it remembers that. You can see that down the bottom in the command bar. It says mode equals trim, radius equals 300. But I can change that. I can type in R again, and let's put in a radius of, say, 600. Hit enter, and again, click one line, and then another line, and then that radius appears. So it works the same way. What I'm going to do, let's do that again. So another tip for you, to recycle the last command that you use, simply hit enter or spacebar, and it brings back the last command. So I'm going to, and again, it's brought it back at a radius of 600. So I'm going to go R, and I'm going to go back to 300, enter, and I'm going to do this corner. Okay, hit escape a couple times, and let's go to our next command. The next command is one of my favorites, which is the offset command. And this saves a lot of time, particularly when you're modeling floor plans. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this polyline. And again, being a polyline makes this process so much quicker. And I'm going to type offset or OFF. Hit enter. And it's going to ask me specify the offset distance or click on the line. So I'm going to type in a distance of, say, 200. Hit enter, and you can see wherever I move my mouse, either inside or outside of that original line, I'm getting a copy or a duplicate of that line. So I'm going to go outside and just click to finish the command. I now have a line, or these two lines are 200 mil thick, which sort of gives the representation of a wall, which is a good segue. So let's use another line, and I'm just going to go from, I'm just going to draw from here across there, just randomly. I'm going to take this line, I'm going to offset it again. I'm going to leave it at 200, hit spacebar, move my mouse down, and click just with my mouse. Okay, so that takes us to the next command, which is the trim command. Now, this trim command might be slightly different if you're using a later version of AutoCAD, but I'll explain it both ways. So I'm going to type in TR for the trim command and hit enter. And it says here, next to my cursor, select objects to trim or shift to select or extend. So in new versions of CAD, which actually it looks like it's doing it here, you can simply just highlight or hover your mouse over the areas of the line you want to get rid of. So in this area, I want to get rid of that. I want to get rid of that. I want to get rid of that, that, and that. Now, there are other ways I can trim. I can also use like a selection box. So if I want to get rid of those two, rather than clicking them individually, I can just click once and go down, and you can see it gets rid of both of them. Same here, across, gets rid of that one. Now, I can just trim those like that, or alternatively, let's do that again, trim, and I'm going to go down and in and down, hit escape a couple times, and I can just click on these lines now because they're broken and remove them. And so that's the trim command, a very powerful tool. The last one that we're going to do is array. So I'm going to take this circle and we're going to array this circle in a path. So I'm going to just type in the command array and then hit enter. And you can either go rectangular, path, or polar. Let's just stick with rectangular for now. So I'm going to go rectangular. And you can see it's bringing up a whole like grid of circles now. So you'll notice in the ribbon that we've got a new tab called Array Creation. We've got the options to choose from here. So the columns, we have 4, and the rows, we have 3. So let's say we only want one row, and hit enter, like you're seeing here now. And I can click on this arrow and keep dragging them out, so I'm getting more instances of them. But I can change the gap between them. So with these columns, which is, these are the columns here, they're currently 7.5 meters in between. I could say it's 5 meters. And now they're touching back to back. Okay, so the total distance is 30,000. But what I can do is I can click on this arrow and I can continue to drag them out, or I can shrink them back in. But it's essentially like a copy command. And once I'm done, I just hit close array, and that command's now closed. But I can click on that array and I can edit that again at any time. The array tool is really powerful when you have multiple of an object that you need to copy along a path, but don't want to use the copy command because you want them in a structured relationship between each other, whether that be right next to each other or at a certain gap to each other. The final tool that I'd like to go through in this introduction are the snaps and the polar snapping as well. So down in the bottom right hand corner, you've got a range of different snapping tools that are available that make modeling so much easier. Now, by default, when you download this file, I think that you will find that these snaps were already automatically activated because they were saved within the file. But let's just have a play around with them so you understand what they are. So I'm just going to go line, L, and I'm just going to click one point here. So you'll notice that I have these green snap lines. So every time I have it like a 90-degree angle, I'm getting like this green dash line. They are snaps. And so they're helping me go directly up or directly to the side in a 90-degree angle. If I didn't have that on, it is actually extremely hard to make sure you have a right angle in AutoCAD, and even harder to make sure that lines draw up to each other. I'll give you an example really quick. So I'm going to turn off my snaps. Okay, I'm going to turn off my polar tracking, and I'm going to just try and draw a box freehand. So I'm going to click here at one point, and I'm going to go up 5,000. I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to hit escape. Now let's say I want to start from the end of this line and draw across. Or even better, let's try and go for the center of this line. I'm going to try and zoom in and go, well, I think the center of the line is around here somewhere. So I'm going to click once, and I'm going to come across, and I'm going to type in 5,000. Hit enter. Hit escape. And let's do the same thing again. I'm going to try and go from the end of this line, and I'm going to draw up 5,000 and hit enter. Hit escape a couple times, and let's see how I've done. So from here, it looks like I've done a pretty good job of finding the center of this line, and I found a pretty good job of getting those two lines connected up. But if I zoom right in, notice that those two lines are not even close to being connected. There's probably less than a millimeter between them, but you'll notice that the further I zoom into them, the more you see that gap. The next one is around this line here. Firstly, you can see that I've actually crossed over that line. I didn't start directly on this vertical line. And secondly, I very much doubt I'm in the middle of that line exactly. So this is the power of snaps and grids and guides that help us draw. So first things first, I'm going to turn back on my snaps, which is this square with a little square in the corner. And I'm going to click on this little arrow. And that arrow brings up all the different snapping options that you have available. I'm going to click on snap setting options, which brings that up in like a window. We have snap objects, and I'm just going to click on a few more. So I've got endpoint, I'm going to put on midpoint, and I'm going to put in quadrant. Let's see, what else? Parent, intersection, and nearest. Let's start with that. We might come back to this later on. I'm going to click OK, and I'm not even going to turn on my polar tracking again yet, but what I am going to do is just go line and enter, and let's see how close I was to the center of this line. So as I hover my mouse over this line, vertical line here, you'll see the endpoints are signified with a green square, and the midpoint is signified by a triangle. You'll notice there's a triangle in the middle of my screen, and there it is there. So if I draw out to the right, this is now going to be a straight line because I've got those grids, and hit enter. Notice how far off. I wasn't that far off considering that I did it through my eye, but nonetheless, I'm still far from accurate. And that line is not straight either. I guarantee you that line is on a slight angle. So the next one is around that polar tracking. So if I go line again, I can go straight out or straight up, but like I said, I have no idea whether I'm drawing straight up or straight down. In fact, you can see in the gray tab, I'm drawing up the screen at 89.4 degrees. I can sort of move, and there I've been able to eyeball 90 degrees. But if I want to go 45, 45.5, 45, there you go. But it's very time consuming, and I will definitely stuff up at some point. So the next command, or the next tool to use, is this polar tracking tool. So it's a little pizza slice to circle the pizza slice. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on the little arrow. And we have different preset options that you can snap to. So in this case, it's just at 90 degree increments. You can do it at 45 or 30 degree increments. I'm going to do 15 degree increments. So I'm going to click on this one here. Now watch what happens. The line highlights green for 90 degrees, but as soon as I go to 15, it highlights again. It snaps. At 30 degrees, it's going to snap. At 45 degrees, it's going to snap. At 60 degrees, it's going to snap, and so on and so forth. So it becomes much easier to draw in that direction. Now, if I still want to draw at a very specific angle, we can do that using the tab key. I'll give you an example. So I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to go enter to repeat the last command. I'm just going to click somewhere to draw a line. I'm going to go out. I'm going to say 7.5 meters, so 7,500 mil. Okay. But before I hit enter, I'm going to hit tab on my keyboard, and notice now that the 7,500 has a padlock next to it, and now my degrees is highlighted in blue. I can type in any angle I like. If I type in, say, 7.8, that's going to be 7.8 degrees, and enter, and now I'm done. And I can either continue drawing or I can hit escape. I now know that line is at 7.8 degrees, and it is 7,500 millimeters or 7.5 meters long. You can see just with these few commands we've gone through here, which is probably less than 10 on commands, you have incredible fidelity and ability to be as precise as you need to be within a CAD drawing. And using some of those snapping tools enables us, once you get the hang of it, to start modeling and draw much faster than you probably even could accurately by hand. To start the assignment, I'm going to open up the template again. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this file as my own. So I'm going to go to the big A and click on the A and then save as, or I can just do it straight from here from the quick bar as well. Save as, and save it to your appropriate folder. In my case, I'm just going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to make sure it's named correctly. So I'm going to go AT1, my initials, dash my student number. Hit save, and you'll know that that is saved because you'll notice that at the top of your screen, the file would have changed to that new name. Okay, next up, let's review the drawings and make a plan of attack for how we're going to draw up this floor plan. So here I've got the PDF files, which I downloaded from StudentWeb, the reference set of drawings. And I'm just going to mark these up and see where we can get to from here. This is a pretty standard workflow of basically any way that I would start designing something, whether it be a reference set of drawings like this, or whether it be a hand sketch that I've just taken a photo of and imported into the computer. So what I'm looking at is really these main lines here. So what we can see is some dimensions, and we might need to clean up some of these dimensions. They're probably not too bad actually, but some of them like 1399, that's a no-go. That should just be 1400. But we'll clean those up as we go along. What we're looking at mostly are these lines that make up the wall and the best way we could draw them. So there's a few ways you could do it. We could do them as single lines and then just offset them. So we know that's a 90mm timber stud. So you could just draw a line, offset at 90mm, and that gives you your second line. The other way you could do it is you could draw one line and then offset it all the way over to the other side, which is 4.6 meters. You could draw this as a polyline where you've got the dimensions. You start at one area, you go up 3.7, across 4.6, down and across. There are many different ways you could do it. And to be honest, that's kind of the point, is that you could experiment with it any way that you prefer to draw and model. I'm probably going to go with the box method and then offset that box 90mm, and then we'll get our internal line for our walls. And thereafter, we have to start looking at the openings. That's the next thing to look at. So the floor plan won't take us that long to actually model up. And the floor plan helps us inform the rest of the drawings. And we'll go through that as that comes up. So let's go back to CAD, back to our CAD file. Okay, and I'm just going to start by making sure that I'm on the right layer as well. So I'm going to take I'm going to look at my layers here, and I'm going to click on this drop down, and I can see all the different layers. And what I'm going to do is we're going to start off by making some new layers too. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hover over my layers manager that you now have open, and I'm just going to adjust some of these windows here, or some of these columns. So I'm just going to click in between here and just drag this out so I can see the name. And I'm going to click on this little icon here, which looks like a little sun next to a set of layers. I'm going to click on that, and it's going to create a new layer called layer 1. And I'm just going to call this guide. Hit enter. And I'm going to change the color of this line to a bright magenta. I'll click OK. And it's a continuous line with the default line weight. I'm going to change the line weight to 0.09 and click OK. All right, that will do for now. And then to set myself on that layer, I can double click on that and I can get a little green tick which shows which layer I'm on. And I can see that as up here as well. So I'm on the guide layer. Now the reason why I've done this is because I want to draw some guides. So I'm going to go line, and I'm just going to go directly up the page, and I'm going to go up the page, let's say 10 meters, 10,000. Now it's important to do that. I'm going to hit escape because look at how small that line is on the screen. I must have been zoomed out really far in CAD. Now a quick way to get back to where we want to be is to just double click the middle mouse button, and it basically zoom extends your current view. So now I can scroll out and I know where I am. The next thing I'm going to do, and to make sure that I'm keeping this model nice and clean, is I'm going to click on this line and I'm going to go move. I'm going to click on the bottom of this line, and instead of just moving it around the screen, I'm going to type in 0, 0, 0, and then hit enter. Okay, now what I've done there is I have moved the line back to its origin. Okay, so now this is the origin point that we're going to start drawing around. So bringing up the CAD drawing here, we can see that if I've drawn a reference line here, that line I just drew there is just like a big line that we're going to reference here. We've got 4.6 meters, and we're going to copy that or offset that across. So I'm going to go back to here, select the line, go offset, and go 4,600, enter, and move that across. So now I know already that that is like the width of this little cabin. Let's go the other way now. I'm going to go line again, and I'm just going to arbitrarily just draw a line across like that. Hit escape a couple times, and let's just double check how far up it is. 3.7 meters is the height of this cabin, or sorry, the width of this workshop, I should say. So I'm going to go back to here, and rather than offsetting it, I'm going to copy it this time. So CO to copy, hit enter, click where I want to copy from, move my mouse up, type in 3,700, hit spacebar, hit escape, and already I've got like a guideline of where my cabin is going to be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch layers. I'm going to do that by going up to this drop down box, clicking on the drop down box, and I'm going to click on A Walls 35. Now, a tip that I'd like to leave you with is to make sure that you're adjusting your layers as you go. You can always change layers of objects after the fact, but it can be pretty finicky and time consuming. It's usually easier just to make sure you're on the right layer as you draw. So let's do that. I'm going to click on A walls 35. And let's start with a polyline, okay? So I'm going to go PL, hit enter a spacebar. I'm going to click on one corner and I'm simply just going to trace this line, these lines here. And because I have those guidelines, I already know that this is the right size. Hit spacebar or escape to end the command. And that's a polyline, so when I highlight it, notice that even though I have these lines underneath of that line, I'm not selecting them because I've just clicked on this one green line and it highlights all of them. Let's use the offset command. And we know that the wall is 90 millimeters thick, so type in 90, enter. Now I'm not going to hover my mouse on the outside of this rectangle, I'm going to go the inside. Okay, because we know those dimensions we just did are the outside dimensions. Click, hit escape. That's our external walls done. Easy as that. Next up, we have to start looking at where we're going to intersect and create our openings. The openings is the next component. So I'm going to go back to our reference file. And I'm going to start sketching in here as well. It's always helpful to sketch over the PDF. So what we're looking at are key dimensions that are given to us. So first things first, I'm just going to get rid of this. First things first, we know the window is 900 millimeters wide. And the window dimension is from the opening to the opening. So we know it's 900 millimeters wide. And our next dimensions, we know it's 1000 mil from the end of this wall. So from the outside edge to where the opening of the window starts is 1000 mil. So we can draw some reference lines here and copy them and offset them for use. The next one is for the door. So we know that we've got our external wall here, and 300 mil offset is the opening of our door. The door opening is 820 millimeters, and so I'm going to copy that across 820. So let's go back to CAD and give that a shot. So now what I'm going to do is I can draw a reference line to start with, and I can do that, or I could just click on one of these reference lines and start copying them across. I'm going to draw other reference lines because it's you don't want to keep seeing these lines going through the whole drawing. So I'm going to make sure I go back to my guideline. So I'm on my guide layer, go to line, and I'm just going to hover my mouse over this wall, click once, and click again, and then hit escape. It looks like I've done nothing, but I've essentially drawn a line over a line. So if I hover over that, I can click on that line. Now, if I can't get that line, this is where those selection boxes are really helpful. Because if I click once and then move my hand from right to left, remember anything that's within that green box, even slightly, is going to be selected. Now, that's no use. It's selecting all of the lines here. That's not going to help me. But if I do the opposite and I make sure I go from left to right, anything that's wholly within that box will be selected. So as long as I've got the length of that new guideline within that blue box, when I click, you can see I've highlighted just that line. And you can see the power and how helpful that tool can be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move that tool or that line across 1000 mil or 1 meter. Okay. And I'm going to use the offset tool again. So I'm going to offset that now 900. That was the width of our window. Okay. And I'm going to do that again on the other side. So I'm just going to copy this line over to this side. I'm going to transfer it so it's across. Okay, hit escape. Click on that line, and I'm just going to hit move, and I'm going to move that across 300. And then I'm going to offset this 820 for the door, like so. Okay. Now there's the beginning of our openings. The next one is the window that's on the left-hand side. Now this is actually quite easy to do, just a different way to go about it. I'm going to go L for line, and because we have our snaps turned on, and particularly we have the midpoint snap turned on, when I hover my mouse over the middle of that wall, you can see that the green triangle appears. So I can just click once and draw directly across, and I might just go all the way across the building. Hit escape. I'm going to hover on that, and I'm just going to move that back a little bit so it's overlapping both sides, just eyeballing it. And then we can offset them to give us our window. So again, I'm going to go a line, and I'm going to start from the end and draw up just to about here. No dimensions, just sort of sketching away. Click on this line, and I'm going to move that up 450 mil. And then I'm going to highlight this and offset it 900. Okay, so the reason why I've done that is I've found the center point of this wall, move one of the lines 450 mil one way, and then offset it the other side to get the 900 smack bang in the middle of this wall. And just like that, all our openings are now modeled. The next bit is actually quite easy. The next bit is to trim these openings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the trim command, trim, and I can just hover over these green lines. So I can go 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1, 2, and in this case 3, 4, because you have that line that divides. I'll hit escape a couple times. And now what we have to do is we've got to make sure we close these gaps up. The reason being is that if I turn off, let's say I'm going to double click on my walls layer. I want to make sure I'm on my walls layer. And then I'm going to turn off the guide layer. So I'm going to click on the little light bulb and turn that off. Notice now that I don't have these lines that are enclosed, and notice that the polylines are now broken. So that's a line, that's a line, that's a line, that's its own line, that's its own line. None of them are continuous. So what I'm going to do is that now I'm on the walls layer. I'm just going to take my line tool and I'm just going to close these up. Quite easy. I'm just going to finish doing that. Okay, now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join these together, because at the moment that's 4 individual lines, this is like 6 individual lines, so is that. I'm going to just select all and type in the command join. Hit enter, looks like nothing happened, but you'll notice now that that is one polyline, that's one polyline, and so is that. Very clean modeling. Again, becomes much easier. Instead of being multiple individual objects, you have one continuous object. Much easier to manage. I'm going to turn back on my guide layers just by turning on the light bulb. Okay, there we are. And let's take a look at the next thing, which is our windows, and particularly making a block. So our first experience making a block, very easy. I'm going to come down to my drop down and I'm going to go to A-Win-18. So architectural window 0.18 of a mil. Click on that and I can see that my layer is now changed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a polyline. So I'm going to go PL, and essentially I'm just going to trace around this. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, done. Hit enter or spacebar or escape to complete the command. That's now a polyline. What I'm going to do is that because the correct way to express a window is through essentially like a rectangle and then 3 lines, the middle line being the glass and then a rectangle on the other side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into CAD. All right, I am going to then draw a line using my Windows layer from point to point. I'm going to click on that and move that across 50 mil, type in 50, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, there is another way you can do this, and it can be a little bit finicky at first. I've got the line command selected on this Windows layer. I'm just going to hover my mouse over this corner. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move my hand to the right, and you'll notice that I haven't clicked anything. I'm just hovered my hand over that corner, and I'm moving my hand to the right. You'll notice I've got like these 2 triangles and the term nearest next to my cursor. That is snapping to that line. It's essentially saying it's on that line. It's the nearest thing to my cursor is that line, and it's snapping to it. As I move my hand across, I've got this weird number in blue. If I type in 50 and then hit enter, it means that, whoops, that didn't work. Let me try that again. It means that worked better that time. It's because I stopped. It means that it starts the line 50 mil away from where I started. And then I can just click once to start the line, once to end the line, and then we're good. There we go. And one more line from the midpoint to the midpoint. And then we're done. So it's pretty easy. Now, you could do it that way, or you could do the copy. Whichever way works best for you. It can be a little bit finicky at first, but it does save a bit of time. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to block these lines. So the way I'm going to do that, and to make sure I do it really clearly, I'm on my Windows layer, so I'm going to go to my property, my layers property, and I'm going to turn off the guide, and I'm going to turn off the walls. So now all I've got is just the glass, just the windows. This makes it much easier to block. I'm going to select all of the lines within this object, and I'm going to type in block. Hit enter, and I'm going to get the block definition window. So there's a couple of things going on here, and most of them we don't have to worry about. We can ignore most of them. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to name the block. So in this case, I'm going to say, I'm going to do this in capitals. I'm going to go window underscore 900 millimeters dash plan. So it's a window block, it's 900 millimeters wide, and it's the plan view of this window. Now that's important because we'll have other blocks which are the elevation view of this window. So you want to make sure that your naming protocol makes sense. The next thing is picking the base point. So where is the base point of this block? I'm going to click on pick point, and I'm going to pick a point on here for my block. Now, you can pick the center point or the middle or whichever point you want, but generally it's a good place to pick a corner because that's the insertion point of the block. So I'm going to click one of these bottom corners, so the bottom left-hand corner. Just click, and this comes back up. And we're done. I'm going to click OK, and now that's saved as a block. You'll notice that when I hit on that, I click on that block, I get that little base point there, and that works for us. Now, the other benefit is that I can go adding this block as many times as I want. I can go to Insert, and then click on Insert here. Under the Insert tab in the ribbon, I click on Insert, and you see there, window 900 mil. When I click on that, notice that that window starts where that base point is, and I can just start inserting that all around the project. Now the benefit to that too is that if I need to edit this block, it will update the other block as well. At the moment, it doesn't seem like that's going to be a lot of work, but I'll show you an elevation in a later class about how powerful that can be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring back my other layers, click on the other layers, and I can just copy this block over, but let's do the same thing again. So I'm going to go to Insert, the Insert tab, and in the ribbon, the first button, Insert, click on the drop-down box and go Window 900. And I'm just going to click anywhere. I'm just going to click here. And in fact, this brings us to a new command that we can play around with, which is rotate. So I'm going to click on the window. I'm going to type in RO into my keyboard, which is rotate, and hit enter. Now, it's asking me to specify the base point of the rotation. In this case, most of the time, it's best to pick a corner, and I'm going to do so here. So I'm going to pick once, and I can either just move my hand around, and I'm rotating at any arbitrary angle, or in this case, I'm just going to type in 90 and enter. Now, which way that rotated doesn't really matter because it's an orthogonal. It's just an orthogonal block that is that's easy to move around. Symmetrical. Sorry, it's a symmetrical block. That's the word I was looking for. So I can click on this, and I can just go click from base point, click into the window, into the opening, and we're now done. Both our windows are already placed in the plan. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the roof overhang. So in the project, you'll see this dashed line, and this dashed line denotes the overhang of the roof. So imagine that, remember that a floor plan is just like an elevation that's cut. So a floor plan is basically, imagine that the best way to think about it, look at my stick person, is that you're up here, and you're looking down on the project, and generally it's cut about 1 meter above the floor plan, above the floor. So I'll do that again a bit better because you cut through the glass. So it's around about there, okay? And that's what a floor plan is essentially. So what you do see sometimes is dashed lines, which are projections. So in other words, because the floor plan is everything from 1 meter and below, you don't really see anything above, but sometimes you need to know what is above. And in particular, where are these eaves in comparison to the outside face of this wall? And that's what these dashed lines are denoting, what the roof overhang is. In this case, that's a 450 millimeter eave, pretty standard eave. And then you can see this dashed line here is the ridge. It's the ridge of the roof as well, the roof profile. So let's go back to CAD and we'll play around with that. This is quite easy as well. There are a number of ways that we could do this. So probably the quickest way that I could think of is I'm going to go click on my home tab, click on the drop down, and we're going to go A-13. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to use my PL for my polyline. Hit enter, and I'm just going to trace the outside of this building from the outside walls. Super quick. Done. Hit spacebar to complete. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that line. And I know I've clicked on it, and a good way to know whether I've clicked on it, we have multiple lines that are now overlapping each other. We've got guidelines, we have walls, we have window lines that are all overlapping each other. So how do I know I've got that dash line? I'm going to look at my properties window on the right, and I can see that when I clicked on that line, it says here the layer is A-13. So I know I've got that right layer. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the offset command again, but this time, let's see if I can get away with not copying it. I'm not sure if we can do that. Let's give it a go. Let's say... maybe we can't do it in this version. That's okay. That's all right. We'll just use the offset command in general. So I'm going to go offset 450. Make sure my cursor's on the outside wall. Click, and we're done. Now, I've got to make sure that I hover on that inside one and delete it. And you can see now, when I highlight it, you're getting a dashed line. Now, it doesn't look dashed from inside the model space, but that's because the line type scale or the distance or the size of that dash has to be adjusted in paper space. Let's not worry about that for now. Next thing we're going to do is, why not use this guideline and just change that into a dashed line? And this is important to show you how to do it because I'm sure you'll come across this many times. So I'm going to click on this guideline. I'm just going to change this layer. It's very easy to do. I can just click on that guideline, go to the drop down box, and change it to A-13, and that changes the layer. The other way you can do it is by matching the properties. So if I go Control Z, we'll go back, we'll make that a guideline again. What I can do is I can click on Match Properties, and I can click on this dash line, and then just click on that guideline. Hit enter, and that's now complete. That turns into a guideline. So match properties is a good tool to essentially say, whatever this, you essentially click that and you say, whatever I click on, say the guideline, I want this object to turn into that. So I can turn those dash lines into the guidelines as an example. Now, last thing I need to do is trim this guideline back. So I'm going to go TR for trim, hover over the ends, and we're done. That's now looking good. So the final thing to do is to make a door in plan view, and we're going to block that as well. So this is not too hard to do. A little bit trickier than Windows, but still just follow my step by step and you'll be fine. So I'm going to go to my properties manager, my layers manager. You'll notice that I'm using the two. I'm using the window, the layer property manager window, and I'm using the drop down box interchangeably. And that's just to make sure I remind you that you've got two ways to do it. I'm going to click on A door 18, double click on it to activate it. Double check that it's highlighted here. And I'm going to start drawing, essentially I'm going to start drawing out of space. So what I'm going to start doing first is I'm going to do a polyline, PL. I'm going to start in this corner. I'm going to come out. I'm going to come out 50 mil, come down 90. Now, where are we? 90 mil. Now, I'm having trouble. This is a good example. So I'm having trouble because I've got the nearest turned on. If I'm away from that guideline, it snaps to 90 degrees, no problem. But when I hover over this guideline, for some reason, it's not giving me that green line that I want to snap. It's very hard to do. You might come across this. So what I'm going to do quickly, I'm going to come down to here and click on this little arrow next to my snaps. And I'm going to turn off nearest. So there's nearest. I'm going to click on that and turn it off. Okay. Go back to here and see that intersection is way better. Now, even when I hover my mouse over that magenta guideline, it snaps. To be honest, there's no right or wrong here. It's just through experience that I know that that was causing the problem, but it's actually a good thing that came up. Okay, so now we're done. We've got one door jamb. We can go on the other side. I can just copy that across, CO. And I'm going to go from this point to that point, and there is my two door jambs. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a circle, CI for circle, and I'm just going to click from one point, from that corner across to here. Okay, that gives me my door arc. It doesn't look like it at the moment, but you'll see in a second. I'm then going to use my polyline again, PL, and I'm going to start from this corner, and I'm going to go up to where it meets the line. It's going to be 720, and then I'm going to come across, say 35 mil, hit enter, come down 720, and then across again. In fact, I'm going to go down to there and hit OK. So now I have my door leaf, and then I've got my door arc. Now, this is not too bad. There's probably something that I should have done a bit better, which is I needed to start this door from the middle of the door jamb. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this down. So I'm going to click on that door leaf and move it down to the middle point, because I've got the midpoint snap selected. It's going to snap to that triangle. Click on that, but now you'll notice the door arc is away from where I want it to be. So I'm going to just hit E for erase and enter and get rid of that arc. And let's do that again. I'm going to go circle. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from this point here across to there. Oops, no, I'm not. Let me do that one more time, sorry. Not the outside of the door, not the inside of the door, the outside of the door, my bad. Up to there. Okay. Then simply using the trim command, TR for trim, I'm going to trim the circle once there. I'm going to zoom right into the door leaf and trim it there. I'm going to hit escape a couple times, and it looks like this is connected, but that is one arc, and then that's the rest of the arc. And now I can just click on the rest of the arc, hit escape, and we're now done. We have a very simple door leaf. Now, you can get way more finicky and exact about how you draw doors. That's a very, very basic door, but it gives you a simple premise of just a normal swing door. So, let's make this door a block. Again, I could go and hide all the other layers if I want to make sure I'm only selecting the door, but I feel confident enough that I'm going to use my left to right selection box like so, and I've just got the door. And I can verify that because, again, look at my properties. I have a number of objects selected. I have 4 objects selected, but they're all in the A door 18 layer. So again, I'm going to go block, enter, and I'm going to call this door underscore. Well, it's actually a 720 mil door, not an 820, because the leaf itself is 720. So I'm going to go 720 mm dash plan. I'm going to click on the base point, and I'm going to click the bottom right hand intersection and click OK. And our door is now blocked. You can see with just a little bit of work there that we've gotten the majority of our floor plan modeled, ready for annotation, and ready to start looking at how we can transform a floor plan into a section.